Hey guys, it's your Friction here, Tank12, I mean call me, I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks, where we are today taking a look at the AMX 50B. This tier 10 French heavy tank is probably one of the most unique tier 10 heavy tanks you can play. And it's probably also one of the largest, at least in profile and height-wise. And that's not a very good thing, because it's the least armored tier 10 heavy tank in the game. I can prove that. I'm not just, throwing around numbers and facts that are not right. This tier 10 heavy only has 100 millimeters of turret armor, and it's as big as a big old barn. So, what does it feel like to be playing the AMX 50B in the year 2024? About 12 years after its first inception and its first integration into World of Tanks. Now, the 50B is a very cool tank. I think it's one of the most rewarding experiences out there, while also being one of the most frustrating ones when you are running into, let's say, 3 or 4 tank destroyers waiting around the corner. This is a heavy tank that lives off the 120mm gun that it has, some very decent gun characteristics, and also the mobility, which allows you to reach up to 65 kph top speed. Now, there is a little bit of a catch. The specific power to weight ratio is certainly not on the level that you're going to be able to reach the 65 kph in a very short period of time. But for a heavy tank, it is rather rapid. The Chinese tanks come close to it in certain regards. The IS-7, the Object 277, they come close to it, but the AMX 50B has them all beat on top speed. And that is a very good thing, because this tank needs all of the help it can get, because the maps have been designed in a way where the AMX 50B does not really have a lot of options when it's a very closed, tight-knit map where you can barely hide away. And since this is a very large tank, it's very difficult to hide this big bad boy and get it in a place where it cannot get shot from every single side. Now, let's get into the characteristics real fast before we jump into 2 replays that I've prepared for you. Then we're going to have the final verdict, and I'm going to send you on your merry way. 120mm gun. It has 4 rounds in a magazine. So the intraclip reload is 2.5 seconds between the shots, which is pretty good for a 120mm gun. If we just compare it to, let's say, the Batchat 25T, it's 2.73. If we compare it to the Tier 9 French Chafutur 4, as you can see right there, it's 4 seconds, so it's actually pretty damn rapid. But the thing is, the armor is, you have so little armor on this thing that it would be a lot better if it would be down at 2 seconds intraclip reload. The reload time is really good, 26.67 seconds with the right consumables and also Brothers in Arms. Gun traverse, you cannot really say anything bad about it, 45.24 degrees per second. 10 degrees of gun depression, it's really great on a ridgeline. You have great aim time, great dispersion, and the average damage per minute is also not too shabby. It's better than the IS-7, better than the Object 780. But you do lack any amount of armor. As I have already shown, the hull armor is rather thick, actually. That's the funny thing. The hull armor on this thing is rather thick. 270 millimeters effective, but the turret is only 100 millimeters, and effective it's like 150 millimeters. So yeah, most of the tanks at this tier will just go right through it like it is butter. Only the angle sometimes, the weird rounded shape does sometimes lead players to bounce your vehicle. But the real reward here is the mobility and the firepower. Now, spotting-wise, the tank has 400 meters space view range, which is not too shabby. It's very tall. It is going to be able to spot over ridgelines and over little buildings. But the main star of this tank is 100% the gun. And I would say, without further ado, let's jump into some replays, talk a little bit how it performs in the year 2024, and if it might need some changes, and who might be the right player to actually decide to go for the AMX 50 line, because the entire line plays very similarly. You get used to having no armor starting from the AMX 5100, and I think players by this point do notice and realize that, okay, that is how I'm supposed to be playing this tank. let's move on to the replays. Welcome back. Today we have two replays. One of them is on Outpost and the other one is on a Mediterranean map, which I kind of forgotten the name of. You guys know exactly what I'm going to be doing when I play the AMX 50B. This is a tank, for me personally, that just screams, risk it for the biscuit. And what that means, I can explain in a second. Basically, whenever you play the AMX 50B, because of its mobility, because it has this ability to get into positions fairly quickly in comparison to other heavy tanks, I like to play a bit more aggressively. Now, obviously, you're not going to be the fastest tank in the game because there are going to be medium tanks, there are going to be some light tanks. But you do manage to get into positions fairly quickly in comparison to other heavy vehicles. Now, as you could see, we tried to go into the middle and reach the monastery, and we do succeed. But we lost about 2/3 of our HP, which is a very, very bad, or I would say it's a trade or a risk that you have to take when you want to have these great gameplays. And sometimes it's a risk that pays off, and sometimes it's a risk that does not pay off. Sadly, you don't really know which it's going to be, and I think most of the time it's probably going to be a risk that will not pay off. But we managed to get into the monastery, and we got fairly unlucky that the AMX 50B and the Object 590 appeared there, but there could have been more tanks, as you can see right there. We have a Mouse, we have a Conqueror as well. They could have easily taken us out of the game. But since we've reached this position, and we do have some tanks in the middle here supporting our fight, we are now able to unleash the full potential of the AMX 50B. The full potential of the AMX 50B is when no one is looking at you, when no one knows that you're there, and when you can just take your time and you can put round after round after round into their side armor. Now, I am using premium ammunition, as I mentioned prior in this video. It's because this tank sometimes is incredibly frustrating to play. You barely have any armor, and sometimes the gun is a bit wonky, and you want to have the maximum reliability available. And for me personally, that means that I want to have the ammunition that allows me to make most of every single shot. It is going to be really expensive to play, but as you can see, it has been worth it so far. You obviously can do the same things with AP, but AP just doesn't have the shell velocity, and I really like to be competitive in the 50B. Now, this is what the 50B is all about. Coming to the side, shooting a target once, twice, 3 times, taking away like 1/3 or half of its HP, and then maybe also setting it on fire. That trade in the end wasn't a very good decision by me. We just lost about the only leverage we still had, the only HP that we could lose, and now anything that shoots us is going to basically kill us. But so far in this replay, you could see the strengths of the 50B. But this is a very situational tank. Now, when you're in a fight where you don't have the chance to get into the middle, where you don't have the ability to flank the vehicles and not be the main target, well, you're going to have a way, way harder time than I have right here. You can see in just about 4 minutes, we have dealt almost 6,000 damage. And that's the beauty of the AMX 50B. That is something you cannot do with a lot of other tanks at tier 10. And it means that you have to give up certain things. And that one thing is probably armor. This tank just doesn't feel like a heavy, except for its size. The only reason it is a heavy is because it's such a massive behemoth of a tank. But you know, the gun itself, the gun is certainly one of a heavy tank, but the way you play it is more like a medium tank, like a supporting medium, like a Batchat, you know, the French, you guys know the French vehicles, you know exactly how they play. And sometimes you just have to be a bit more cautious, but every once in a while, when you're on a map like this, taking the fight to the enemy by driving into the middle and then being able to engage like into 3 different directions, that's where you can really utilize the full potential of the AMX 50B. Now, would it have helped if I had like additional HP? Probably. Maybe I shouldn't have pushed immediately at the beginning of the battle, but since I got here first, before the Moistion or the Mouse and the Conqueror appeared on the enemy team, I think we were still able to get into this position rather unharmed. Obviously, the 50B and the Object 590 were unleashing hell on us, but at the same time, I think coming here was not a bad choice, because in the end, dealing that, I think, almost 6k damage in the end with the T95 that we do hit one more time has been totally worth it. And that is the biggest strength of the 50B. The gun is very nice, but the gun is not the most reliable. It's very accurate at range, as you can see right here. Very nice sniping shot into the side of the T95. And it also reloads fairly quickly, but it doesn't have the best standard ammunition pen. It's very old. It's the old school pen that we have on the T125. And it doesn't have heat rounds as premium rounds. But your biggest problem is going to be the lack of armor that you have with this tank. So let's see another gameplay where the mobility is really shown off of the AMX 50B, but at the same time also the limitations of this vehicle, where you can see just where it is not able to perform anymore. So the second gameplay is on Cliff. How could I forget this name? Basically, we're going to be playing the E3 position and also the entire E line here over to E6. Now, this is a very interesting matchup, because you'll just see how much of a fight we have in the middle, and also that the enemy team does manage to take the hill with a very interesting hill rush at the beginning of the match. So yeah, when you're playing hill or cliffs, you want to have tanks in the middle here, being able to spot anything crossing, and you also want to have tanks that are taking the position over at E3 or F3. Because when you take this little valley, you're going to be able to shoot anything that is in the middle. So you have a counter here. You also have a counter for tank destroyers at the back when you're able to spot them, like at A5. And also here the same thing with F3 and fighting tanks over at the K5 sniper spot and fighting tanks in the middle right there. Now, to have this lineup in the middle is very important, because you don't want to have a breach where they can shoot like your tanks coming in from both sides. Once more, I want to reiterate the mobility of this thing, just how fast the 50B is able to traverse around the map, and also I want to underline just how weak the armor is on this thing. We get penned by a standard AP round from T125, and we bounce him twice with premium APCR on the lower plate. And there's a very uncomfortable situation developing on the hill. The enemy team has a BZ75, the tier 10 Chinese heavy tank that rushed towards the hill with his probably with his rocket propelled boosters, and now he's in a position where he's going to be very annoying to drag out of. We managed to hit the Stritzwagen K one more time. One of the rounds went into the rock, and that's just sadly my daily reality whenever I play World of Tanks. The lag spikes that I do have, because I usually play with about 140 milliseconds of lag or latency. That usually means that I'm not going to be able to have the perfect snapshots. And in World of Tanks, that latency is enough that my turret is always lagging behind a little bit, so I have to have a bit more patience. So right there, we had a very nice clip where we put 1 into the Stritzwagen K into the back of its turret and 2 into the Mäuschen. But the Mäuschen is going to be a bit of a problem in this match. He's going to be playing a position where he's going to be extremely annoying towards us, or for us. And at the same time, they are packing the middle with several tanks. And the worst thing is that they do have control of the hill. But they do lose the EBR 105, I think, fairly shortly. And we are now just trying to see if we can pick off any targets. Now, one very important thing with the AMX 50B is that you do not want to expose yourself without, being able to put 1 or 2 shots into the target. And you also always want to retreat immediately as soon as you realize that you do not have the adequate protection, or you just get lit up. You immediately want to fall back. You want to get into a position where you do have some cover and where you are able to get behind a rock if things turn sour. One of the worst things with the 50B is its absolute size. The 50B is so large that it is probably a lot of the times a very well-liked target for artillery. That means that you have to adapt when artillery is in one of your matches, because eventually they are going to try to splash you when your armor is only 30 millimeters thick on the side or on the top deck. So keep that in mind. But so far you can see in this situation we don't have enough armor to really advance further and go into an aggressive position. We don't really want to push. We want to see if we can put small little needles into targets that we can shoot and where we are going to be able to pen them. And this is where, like, the you kind of lose a little bit with the 50B's ammo choice, because APCR is never going to be as effective as heat, but at the same time, with APCR, you don't have that drawback of having bad shell velocity. That E5 is still in a position where we would really like to take him out, but yeah, we should probably not peek again, because he's just going to be able to pen our turret and drive back, and we're going to lose another 300-400 HP in very quick succession there. The one thing we should have done in this matchup was to really control the middle better, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm transferring over to the middle, and because of the mobility of this tank, it really isn't all that bad to be moving around constantly. The mobility allows you to reposition, and it's also what is intended for the AMX 50B. Sadly for us, we get a very bad shot on the side of the Mäuschen, an angle where we weren't able to pen him at all, and we do take 1 hit from the Mäuschen in return. So we're slowly but surely losing HP, and we're also losing some tanks around us. One thing that is a bit annoying is the intra-clip reload of 2.5 seconds. It is not the worst by far. If you've played other French vehicles, you know that the Char Futur also has pretty horrific statistics when it comes to intra-clip reload with 4.5 seconds, and that is pretty atrocious. But on the AMX 50B, since you barely have any armor and you're such a large target, being out in the open with these 2.5 seconds is just, a lot of the times, a little bit of a death sentence. And I know that the 2.5 seconds are certainly justified and probably balanced in a certain way. I would much rather have it at 2 seconds, because the tank itself lacks so many things. It doesn't have any armor, the ammunition loadout is kind of limited, and you're such a large target. There are quite a few pretty large drawbacks that they could have given it like the 2-second reload, and I think personally it would have been okay. Now, whenever you're trying to engage a target that is below you, you do have the gun depression. That is something they did change. They did make the AMX 50B a lot more competitive. But yeah, if you're out and fighting a FV215B, you're not going to be sticking around for long to, you know, get a perfect shot into that target. Now, the dispersion on the vehicle is actually not that bad, but it still takes a little bit to be fully accurate. And I think in a vehicle such as the 50B, where you want to be a stealthy assassin, you basically never get to be stealthy. The large size of this thing just makes it impossible to really hide it in any way, shape, or form. And you kind of just have to maneuver around the map and see where you can stay and maybe even play a bit more passive, sit in the second line or maybe in the third line, and just see if you can snipe targets at a distance. But that's where the ammo comes into play, and where you will lack the amount of pen for a lot of targets. And then it becomes kind of awkward, and you much rather be a flanking vehicle. But when you're flanking, the tank is just so large that it becomes very easy to spot, and it's a very easy target to take out, especially when artillery is around. So as you can see, this game has now turned on its head. We lose our Yak Panzer 100, we lose the 121B. We have a Slitzwagen 103B at the back with an Object 212. But we're the final sole surviving heavy tank in this match for our side, or for the entire game. And what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to go and see if I can actually manage to maneuver around and kill the T-30, hoping that if I can kill the T-30, I might be able to spot the targets in the middle so that the Slitzwagen 103B is able to engage them. But at the same time, I'm kind of regretting my choice not to stay around the D5 area where I can spot them. And sadly for us, we spot the Leopard 1, and that's a tank that we certainly do not want to engage with that very high rate of fire and also the great high explosive pen. We are hoping that the Slitzwagen and the 212 are actually able to do some damage to him. But as you can see, we lose the 212, and basically we've already lost this match because we've given them way too much sightline and we've given them way too much control of the map. Basically, in the end, they held the middle, they held firm, and they managed to hold us back in most of the sectors where we attacked. And in the end, in a position such as this, you just run around with the 50B, and it becomes incredibly awkward to really do anything. And that's where you have your limitations. As soon as you're going to be the main target, the main focus point of the enemy, you're going to be toast pretty quickly, and there is no way that you can hide this behemoth of a vehicle, and you kind of just have to resign and fight it out, maybe get 1 or 2 more shots of damage in. But of course we run into the Foch B that has repositioned itself down here and maneuvered all the way through the middle, and that is GG. But yeah, overall, I think the AMX 50B is still a very fun tank to play. It takes some time to learn the intricacies of the AMX 50Bs. It takes time to understand where to be at what time in the AMX 50B. The mobility is a very nice strong point of the vehicle. It's a certain positive, but it can be a negative when you're running around all the time and never really focusing on one side. As you can see right here, I've lost focus on where I should have been, and I should have probably pushed with the other vehicles to the F3 line and then put some more pressure on the guys in the middle. But we weren't able to really breach anywhere, and we just constantly lost HP with our team. So it's a tank that requires a lot of patience, a lot of skill, and sometimes there are going to be situations where you're not going to be able to do anything in the 50B, and you just have to absolutely get pounded by the enemy team. And that can happen at the beginning of the match. But as I have shown in the very first replay, you can have great games, take massive amounts of risks, and still come out with with a very great feeling of achievement and accomplishment, because you managed to get into a position, do a lot of damage, and then win the match. But be a bit cautious. Don't always take risks. Read the map, read your team, see how the players react, what kind of vehicles you have in your matchup, and then you have to adapt accordingly. This is a tank where you have to be on your toes and you can never really take a moment to breathe. And that's probably what makes it so hard to play this tank well. But it's also the one thing that makes these French tanks so exhilarating. As soon as you get into the right position, you're going to be able to do a lot of damage in probably a very short time. You can be these stealthy assassins that do massive amounts of damage without really taking any damage in return if you play it right. So would I recommend grinding the 50B in the year 2024? If you like mobile heavy tanks and you're not afraid of failing every once in a while to get some great games, I think the 50B could be something for you. If you like heavy tanks with autoloaders, the 50B is certainly something for you. The gun is very reliable. The line itself is a lot of fun as well. You will learn how to play these tanks because they all have no armor, and you'll learn how to get around the map without getting constantly lit up. But if you're a player that mainly plays the German heavy tanks, you want high alpha damage, you want a lot of armor, this is not something for you. No protection, there is absolutely no wiggle room. You make a mistake, you die, that's how it goes. And that can be quite frustrating. This is something not for the newer players, this is for the older players who have already had some experience with the TVP, for example, with the Batchat 25T. It's just bigger and it's an easier target. So, hope you guys did enjoy this little revisited episode. The next one we're going to be doing on the FV215B183. I'm looking forward to that, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Until then, have a good one.